magic, the myth, the legend of the Fountain of Youth. And before you go laughing this one off, as we all will, know that before we get to the fabled Ponce De Leon in his search for magical waters, that there's a rich history of people searching for mystical waters that will grant you eternal youth. A history that spans continents, cultures, and countries, as well as ages. That history is first documented by Herodotus 500 years before the birth of Christ. Herodotus is an old Greek dude who is known as the father of history because he wrote a book titled The Histories. In Book 3 of his esteemed history of the ancient world, Herodotus wrote of the Macrobians, who lived long, exceptional lives. And for those who wonder who the Macrobians are, well, they are the ancestors of those who live in Ethiopia or Somalia, depending on who you might ask. But so you know, lifespans in both Somalia and Ethiopia have lower average lifespans than most other nations. And if you're interested in what country has the longest lifespan, that honor goes to Monaco, followed by Singapore and Hong Kong. And speaking of lifespans, legend has it that Alexander the Great embarked on a journey in search of the water of life. And like the fountain, these waters too granted immortality. This long journey took Alexander, with a servant by his side, to the mythical lands of darkness. Unfortunately, like the fountain itself, Alexander's search for the waters of life is probably a myth, as there is absolutely no evidence that the greatest military mind of all time went on a search for eternal youth. And the myth of life-preserving waters didn't just stop with Alexander, but unlike Alexander, the great Prester John was not a real person in history. Prester John's myth starts in the 12th century, where as a Christian king he ruled over a vast and wealthy kingdom. His myth begins in a letter, most likely a forgery, describing his nation and the wealth that Prester John ruled over. And mentioned in that letter is a spring of water with rejuvenating abilities that claims that if you were to dip in it, you would be forever 32 years of age. Now, I can't tell you the age you'd be if you were to travel down to St. Augustine, Florida, and drink from their fountain of youth. Well, actually, I can because I have. And as you can tell, that little sip of fresh, clear water didn't do me much good in keeping me young and healthy. And I was a lot younger than 32 when I first sipped those cool, tasteful waters. And to understand why St. Augustine is the home of the fountain of the youth, it's time to talk about Ponce de Leon. Ponce de Leon was a Spanish explorer and conquistador, and he is credited with being the first European to set foot in Florida, and is responsible for giving Florida its name. And I know a lot of you think that was Christopher Columbus, but Columbus never actually set foot on the American continent. And if that isn't enough to burst your bubble, this little fact isn't going to help either. There's no proof that Ponce de Leon ever bothered to search for the fabled fountain of youth. Historians believe the myth was perpetuated after his death, and was done so to humiliate and assassinate his character. That's right, a political rival made up the story to make Ponce de Leon look stupid, foolish, and gullible. But it kind of backfired, because over time the legend grew and became a romanticized myth due to the exotic stories of Florida that were being circulated. And the reason the myth was largely believed was because it was entirely plausible. And it was plausible because the locals, the Taino people, had their own myth regarding the Fountain of Youth. A myth wrapped in the belief that there was an actual river or spring on the small island of Bimini that could restore your youth if you dipped a big toe in its refreshing waters. Now, as far as why St. Augustine is the home of Ponce de Leon's Fountain of Youth, well, that's where old Ponce de Leon made landfall. Now, I hope this quick video about the Fountain of Youth ain't making you pack your bags and head off to Florida, because the chances of you finding eternal youth, well, that ain't gonna happen. But if you, like me, know that as you're cutting your way through the wilderness and search for youth, you're going to come across a couple of 3 alligators. And being old, you probably ain't going to be able to run all that fast, unless you happen to stumble into the refreshing waters of eternal youth. And if that does happen, please give me a call. I got a question for you. You think maybe there's somebody out there that has found the fountain of youth and they ain't sharing it? Yeah. That's a question I'd have a shot of tequila over. Good question to ask, but you know what? Who knows? Who cares? I don't know. Because you know what? You and I were born, and you and I gonna grow old. As much as I would not like to. Especially because it goes so fast. You know, you grow old. What is that fucking beeping? Yeah, maybe it won't happen again. No, that is just the universe fucking with me. I ain't worried about it. Are you? Okay. Hey, thanks for watching. Seriously, thank you. If you haven't sub. Why not? You got nothing else to do. And if you do run across that fountain of youth, I would appreciate a heads up.